Here we go. Okay, good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Sue.
Thanks for joining us. You are a you have your own business where you are a social media manager and an event planner, correct? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Mostly, or I think all, doing these services for food-related businesses, right?
Typically, yes.
But you got started, just give us a little background on how you got to where you are, because I think you maybe got started in the music industry. So
Yeah, that's right. I went to college in Southern California and working in music was my dream. So I got a degree in public relations and ended up working for an independent record label in kind of doing a little bit of everything, but ended up doing some PR and some event planning, putting on South by Southwest showcases and such. But I ended up moving up to Oregon for a number of reasons. Mostly, I just got really burnt out. It didn't pay very well, and it was hard work. And so I moved to Oregon. My family had moved up here, and so I moved to Portland and just sort of fell in love with the food world up here. I started a food blog just for fun as a creative outlet. At the time, I kind of landed in a boring day job for a couple years just to sort of figure out what was next. But during that time, I started writing a food blog and promoting myself via Twitter and Instagram and all of that. So I sort of learned the ropes of social media just by sort of doing it for myself. And one day I had a restaurant approach me and said, "Well, I like the way that you write about food and you post about food for yourself. Can you help us?"
Oh, very, very cool. Well, I do know that I remember your blog. I'm not sure if you're still working on it, but I remember when I first met you, reading through some of your recipes and stuff. Um, can you tell us exactly, or maybe in a general way, because I know it's different for each client, depending on their needs and their wants. What exactly is social media management? What are you doing for your clients?
So it can kind of depend for each client and what they want, but the general scope of work is, checking account that we have contracted. Most of my clients these days is just Instagram and Facebook. Some want Twitter. I don't do much in the world of like LinkedIn or Pinterest. I do manage Pinterest for one client. But mostly Instagram and Facebook, and I'm responding to comments. I'm posting new content. I'm researching the best hashtags to use, posting things on stories, and then usually working with the marketing team to kind of determine what the brand voice is, how often posting, um, boosting posts, and I do create some content as well. And again, that depends on client to client. Some have in-house photographers, some don't, and that definitely I have learned. It took me a while to figure this out, but got to charge a lot more for that because, as you know, taking photos is and editing photo is a lot of work. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And what are some of the metrics that you're looking at in terms of success? Like in terms of what are you hoping to show for your client by managing their account? Is it getting more followers? Is it, well, obviously getting more business, but I mean, what are some of the measurements that you're looking at to determine whether or not you feel like what you're doing is helping them out, or if they feel it's helping them out?
Right. And again, some of that can depend on client. I try to ask them ahead of time what their social media goals are. What is it that they're looking to get out of it? I have a couple that don't really care about getting more followers as long as the engagement is good and or business is good that they're seeing. And I think a lot of people too just know in this day and age that having a social media presence is important. It's good for your SEO. It's good for customers to be able to find you. It's good for branding and all of that. But then with other clients, we have really specific growth goals. Like I'm doing monthly reports. We're looking at the analytics. So for me, I feel good around when all of those things are doing well, when there's good engagement and there's good growth. And as you know, in this day and age, doing that organically can be hard. You have to, especially Instagram will keep you on your toes, sort of having to change the plan at all points. And thankfully, I tend to work with clients that are understanding about that, because a lot of that isn't necessarily my fault if a client isn't growing. Sometimes it just, these platforms make it hard for you. And so, but I'm always, I like a good challenge. And so for me, it's just like, well, challenge accepted. I'm going to figure out how to keep going up.
Yeah, your game for a challenge. And what about, I know that I guess doesn't really cross over into the events planning because that's sort of a separate thing. And we'll get to that in a minute. But sometimes you will host events on behalf of your client to invite influencers
Mhm.
to come and like try out some things. And then with the understanding that they will post pictures and then that helps sort of build like a snowball effect because their friends will know about it and so on and so forth. That's something that you still do, correct?
Correct.
So, so you're planning little events, maybe like when a menu changes or a new item comes out, or it's a new season and you know, whatever. But what about excuse me, um, when you're um, working with influencers and maybe bloggers, are you also doing other things with them, like asking them to like special projects, you know, like having an influencer or a photographer take some photos, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like with the clients that I work with that tend to have a big enough budget to do things like that, to hire influencers or bloggers or photographers to do special projects, usually it's sort of a team of us coming together to sort of determine who's the right fit for that. Several of my clients do that. And it's funny, sometimes it falls under like the publicist, like some of my clients will have a separate publicist and I have
Right.
a social media manager. So it's always a little bit interesting. Like I think in this new world, people kind of can't figure out who the influencer, like what that falls under. Is it, it's not really traditional PR in the sense of like sending something to a magazine, but it's great. I mean, I will say the effectiveness of it is, I think, huge. I mean, I have always seen it, especially on the social side. I see such a good social bump after we do things. And especially if you're particular about who you choose, like people that like are trustworthy and that they're respected in their community, they take beautiful photos. And it's always, I mean, I see such a good social boost from that. And yeah, I think it's really worthwhile. So that's why I keep doing it.
Neat. And I've seen you over the years in different places. Like, for example, I think the last couple of years, I've seen you somewhere in the Midwest, like eating a lot of grilled cheeses. Can you tell us about like some of the fun projects you've worked on and where they've taken you?
Yeah. So in the before times, as I like to call them, I did some work with Tillamook Cheese, and I was traveling around the country. Helped They launched some cheese and ice cream on the East Coast and in the Midwest, and so they hired me and some other people to throw some fun like cheese pop-ups. I think I was in North Carolina, Baltimore, DC. I'm missing one. Um, Oh, Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really fun. And events is something that I've done basically since my time in the music industry. And as I've gotten older, I have a kiddo now. I'm a bit pickier about the events I do, and clearly events aren't really happening right now. But it's so much fun. I'm a people person, and so for me, it's my favorite of the jobs that I do. It's demanding. It takes you away from it's one of those. Social media is great because I can do it at any time. It's a really good kind of a gig for anyone, and but at the same time, like I said, events, there's a really fun challenge to it. And like bringing people together, especially to eat delicious food, it can't be beat.
It sounds like the dream job.
It really is. And I was getting flown around the country to like make people happy with like delicious cheese.
Right.
It was great. So yeah.
Right. Now, we are learning how to take better food photos using our smartphones. So, and um, we're throwing a ton of information to our students because assuming that many may be starting out like I did, which is whatever I cooked for dinner, I just sort of plop it down on the kitchen table and take a picture of it, with the lights on or whatever. And I have been interviewing other photographers, stylists, and then it occurred to me that I should talk to you, that you were the perfect person to talk to because I know that you shoot all of your food photos on your phone,
That's
right?
true. Hmm.
So, and your photos are gorgeous. So I was hoping you could give us, and I'm sure that from time to time, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably do sort of counsel your clients on how to take better photos or just some good best practices and do's and don'ts. So, and I'm sure your photography has evolved over the years. So tell us what you know about how to take a good food photo with your phone.
Yeah, it's interesting. Someone gave me the advice years ago to not be a jack of all trades and to be, it's hard with social media because you feel the temptation to have to be everything. And so, what I try to do is when I really need like professional photography and lifestyle photography and all these things, like hire somebody to do that. But for me, taking, a flat lay of food, that is a thing I can do on my phone. Absolutely. And so it's handy to be able to do both. Like there, I hire photographers for my clients all the time, but at the same time in this world doing this gig, like I also have to be able to take a good photo in a pinch, right? And so, I mean, natural light is absolutely key. It is your best friend. Like I bought some things from replica surfaces like a year
Yes.
ago. Oh,
Yes.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with them. And because
It's wonderful. They're
I mean,
wonderful.
these days I'm working from home. My house is small. I share my house with other people, but I can just kind of set them up at this little corner that I use as my office, and I just kind of leave my like food photography stuff. And obviously, it's easier at this time and more daylight. But yeah, I just have learned to, like, I work with a canned fruit company. And so we do some like baking projects. And so I'll just bake something early in the morning, know that I need to shoot that, before 4 p.m. when things start to go down. And I bought a couple like, lights and stuff on Amazon. But again, I'm not a professional photographer. So to me, I don't want to invest a lot of money in photo equipment, at least at this point in my life. I'm not trying to be a professional photographer. I'm a social media manager. So I invest my time and energy in scheduling software and having a really good Dropbox, like, like those kinds of things. And so, but man, those services are awesome. And picking up cute dishes at thrift stores. Again, this is my industry that I'm in the food world. So having some cute bowls, and I'm working with a tea company now. So I actually just realized like, oh, I need to up my mug game. So, yeah, those kinds of things.
Right. And you do edit your photos. So are there any apps that you like to shoot in, or do you just use your native camera app? And then how about
I
editing?
usually shoot, yeah, I usually shoot in my native camera app and then I edit in either, gosh, it really depends. I use Visco or a Color Story or um, what's the other one? I'll do a lot of fun. If I have to do like a flyer or something, I use Adobe Spark Post. I
Hmm.
know everyone says I should use Lightroom. I just haven't stopped to like train myself in Lightroom enough yet. So
That's what
it
we're
seems,
learning.
yeah, it seems the most professional of all of them, but I just know it like a color story, some app I downloaded years ago, and I'm just used to it. So, but it's great. It works for cropping and, adjusting brightness and levels and all that sort of thing. So,
Exactly, exactly. And they do have, it's still fun for me at least to just check out what the presets would do, just to
yeah,
see what
yeah,
they would look like. I love to play around with presets. And in Lightroom, we have what are called profiles, which are almost, I mean, they're only not a preset technically. For all intents and purposes, they are like a preset, but those are really fun to work with. So yeah, the replica surfaces are something that when I walk through my little studio at home, I'm showing our students because I think they're affordable.
mhm,
Um, they're wonderful because they have those brackets. And so you have, if you want to shoot a head on, you've got like a nice background in addition to the surface. So I'm a big fan of replica.
yeah.
They
Having
also,
having the background set, I've searched and searched and I couldn't find anything else like that. And to me, it's like, why has no one else done this? It's great. So yeah, I need to get a few more. I feel like I'm tired of the ones I have. So like,
it's a
I
good
want to own the whole
resource.
collection.
And they also have helpful tutorials on YouTube on composition and how to shoot food product, and just general product also. So anyway, how about, are there any trends that I mean, I know that we're in strange times, but are there any trends that you're seeing this year or last year that really stand out in terms of branding or messaging, or just any kind of food related content?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I've noticed that at least for me, performance wise, photos that tend to feel more like lived in and authentic are tending. I feel like people are tired of the overly styled, super perfect, all the time imagery. I really appreciate that. Like, I think that having a human element and having things feel a little less composed, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
like having things be a little messy, having a few crumbs, in a shot or what have you, can be great. And also, I'm really torn on this, but like I feel like the new way of photography, they're really like bright colors and kind of blown up this like 70s vibe. It's not my vibe, and I don't even know that's any of my clients' vibe, but hey, it's like really fun to see in my feed. So I'm curious. The is really going with that right now. And so I'm curious how long that's going to last, and the oranges, and I don't know, I feel like I'm seeing a lot more like funk, and like even the lighting is much more moody in photographs and so much less of this like, I feel like the super white clean minimalist is not going away. I think that will always be popular, but it seems like people are pushing back on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, we're seeing a lot of color in backgrounds and in food, but a lot of hard light, what we call hard light. So it's not necessarily diffused with any kind of modifier. It's just like boom, that hard, harsh sunlight and the very strong shadows, which kind of gives a more graphic look. And yeah, it's interesting because I know it'll pass. So it'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see what's next after
Yeah.
that.
And I think it's really tricky because some food looks really good in that, and then every once in a while I'm like, I don't know, that kind of looks, that cake looks like weird and dry. And so
That's
yeah, I feel like when people nail that look, they really nail it. But I think you have to be more careful with
That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, so we know that you have the dream job to a certain extent,
it.
and you have fun doing what you're doing. But I know that these things, what you do, takes time. I mean, it's not something that you can really multitask. I know that you have an assistant and a team that helps you out, but scheduling posts, these aren't things that really can be automated too much. So what is a day in the life like for you? I mean, how much time are you spending on these accounts and posting photos and engaging with other followers and things like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because social media, it never stops. And so in some sense, it's really hard to ever really fully walk away from it. And that's why it's nice that I have a team, that I have an assistant, that there's two eyeballs, and we can kind of, if I need to deal, if my kid's sick or something, I can take time away and deal with that. And we do schedule out, as we try to schedule out a week ahead of time. But especially working with small businesses, things change so quickly, and especially in this pandemic, I think things change all the time. And so I'm constantly getting texts from clients of last minute changes and things. So we've got this beautiful post all up in schedule. Think about like the snowstorm that we had in Oregon last week. I mean, I was on the phone constantly. Are you guys gonna be open today? Are you not? Da, da, da. Are you offering takeout? My phone was just ringing constantly. And so you never know. It's so weird how something like a snowstorm can affect my job so much, but it really did. And just because we have to get our messaging out, because that's where people are going to look. Is this business open today? They're first going to look at our social media page. So I have to get those answers. And
That's
then
where I go, you know.
yeah, and sometimes it changes. Sometimes a client will say, we're going to be open, and then they'll call and say, just kidding, we're closing 2 hours early. Can you change that? But so there's a bit of that. But yeah, it's an ebb and flow. I feel like I've found some systems that work for me. I'll kind of um, set aside a couple hours each day to just like check in on everything. My assistant's usually the one who will go in and like look at every account, make sure that there's nothing. Mondays, I like to sit down and send my clients an email kind of to talk about, what the week's going to look like. But again, it's one of those things where I'm pretty organized person, but no matter how much I try to organize this and have a set schedule, it's never really like you never quite know what's going to come down the pipeline. So
Right.
I just try to roll with it as best I can and put some boundaries in place so that I'm not working all the time. And I've gotten a lot better about that, turning my phone off at a certain point of night, because especially in the industry that I work in, like no one's gonna, like the kind of emergencies we're dealing with, like it can wait till the morning. And usually my clients, especially in this day and age, if it's a restaurant, they are closed by 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Just touching on a pain point, possibly. Assume that when the pandemic hit last year, that many, restaurants and food related businesses were forced to sort of farm in their social media management in-house,
Hmm.
or just sort of let it go altogether for a
Yeah.
little while. And I'm curious because I myself saw definitely a drop off in the beginning, but then as restaurants began to pivot and offer takeout, they were needing images for their takeout menu that they didn't have before, just real simple square shots of the dish over and over and over.
Hmm.
I'm curious, sort of how last year was for you, and what you sort of see for the future as we move forward, because some of our businesses are not around anymore, but have changed how they do business.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think I lost 75% of my business in a month. Yeah, and as you know, we had worked together on some projects before. So there was one set of restaurants that I worked with that they were all attached to hotels, which and centers, and really relied on the arts and sports to succeed. And those all have closed and are not coming back. And then I also worked with a couple hotels locally that one has closed permanently, and yeah, so it was a hard year for restaurants and hotels, and I pivoted, and I'm really grateful. It took a minute, and the clients that I've kept and who were able to pivot to takeout, I've kept the whole time, which is really great. And then I picked up some new clients. I found, interestingly enough, that for me, mostly it's been more like food, like products. So I'm working with a tea company now. I've
Yes.
worked with a canned fruit company. I'm working with like a grain-free baking mix company, and I just picked up a gin company as well. And all of those things aren't necessarily, affected by the closures. Like
Exactly.
people are baking more at home now than ever. People are making cocktails at home now more than ever. So it's still in the same space, but I had to get kind of creative as to who is sort of growing and has the budget and wants help in this space. And of course, I mean, do I want to still work with restaurants and help them? Yes. But has it been a brutal year for them? Yeah, like a lot of them can't afford it, and I completely get that.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, well, any other advice that you can think of to, burgeoning chefs and photographers? Otherwise, I'll let you go and get back to your work.
So just throw yourself into it as much as you can. Like I think be a good person, network, like show support other people in the industry. I think that like the world is really small, and people like to, like you scratch someone's back and they're going to scratch yours. For me, I don't do a lot of marketing. All of my business is word of mouth. And it's because, and the interesting thing with being a social media manager as opposed to, and also with photographer, your work is really, it's just there for people to see, right? People can go look at these feeds and they know what I do. And so, I don't, that is my portfolio. And so do good work, be a good person, and, be consistent, keep at it. I think for me, having a niche has been really good. Obviously, it was a little tough last year. Never in a million years would have guessed that my whole industry would be so affected. But at the same time, I persisted and I kept working, kept my head down and worked hard, and, it's coming back around. So yeah, don't try to be too many things to too many people. Pick a couple things and really focus in on those.
Well, that's a wonderful message to end with. It's been really nice catching up with you again, and thanks again for joining us, Lindsay.
Of course, thanks for having me, Sue.
Sure.